Hello, everyone. I'm talking today with Dave Denham, who is a trustee of the Meopham Windmill Trust. And I just want to welcome you to a different kind of interview. First question I'd like to ask you
Yes.
is what was it that attracted you to this project in the first place? What grabbed your interest?
Right. Well, two things really. One of my close friends now and my fellow trustee, he was approached by one of the retiring trustees, of which there are only three. And she said to him, "Do you fancy becoming a trustee of the windmill?" Because Andy comes from an engineering background. And of course, he then said to me, "Dave, do you fancy becoming a trustee of the windmill?" And because both of us are from engineering backgrounds, I said, "Well, why not? Why not?" And that was the start of it. Now you need three to be quorate, so we approached well, certainly one other, which was Andrew Morgan, and then two others, and these are people that are known to ourselves. So then we established the five trustees. So that's how we got into it. So that got our interest, the engineering side of it. And once we looked round inside and said, well, we can sort this out, providing we can get some of these bits going. And bearing in mind, it was standing there then as just a tower without any sails on it, without the cap on it, without the fan tub. So it looked a bit sorry for itself. And we said, well, we can get this sorted out. We benefited in the fact that previous trustees and the council and the county council had already sanctioned all the gear coming off and going up to Suffolk for repair. So we came in after that had been agreed. But then, yes, we hit the ground running, really. But yes, an
Mhm.
interest in things mechanical. And so it's such a beautiful thing that we were happy to take it on. Really, it was the sort of natural run of events. People get into these things and then it runs its course.
Do you think you took on more than you anticipated in the beginning?
um, I think what was initially thought to be, from an engineering point of view, we can get this sorted. What we didn't expect was almost after our appointment, Kent County Council, I should think within 2 months, decided to consult on divesting the eight Kent-owned, KCC-owned windmills, of which Meopham is one. Then, of course, there was a consultation procedure throughout Kent. We canvassed quite heavily for keeping Meopham Windmill retained by KCC. So there was it was almost like an election, really, going around leaflet dropping, making the case for why we felt that Kent should retain not only us, but the other seven mills. And that was quite a big step. That was quite a lot of work, which frankly wasn't windmill preservation related. It was a campaign.
And so that involved all the seven mills. That must have taken a lot of negotiation and
Well,
work.
it did. There's there's a total of eight KCC owned windmills. There are others that are either independent or privately owned. So let's say there was approximately 12 to 14 mills. I set up a WhatsApp group. I do like my WhatsApp groups, don't I? I set up a WhatsApp group for the Kent mill managers, and now they're all on it. And before that, there was communication by email, but really a number of them just communicated with Kent. And it was quite interesting. And also, we had meetings to discuss where we were and the divestment issues. So that was something else that we set up. And it was really interesting to get the take of other, I say, mill managers. You can't have everyone on the WhatsApp group, but the mill managers then got the feedback. And we had one or two quite powerful allies or one in particular, was a former Kent County Council member that had a particular interest in conservation. And we've still got him with our group. So we had, I think it was quarterly meetings, although at one point we were meeting every month to discuss divestment and what it would mean to us as mills. Although there was, I think, a twice yearly Kent Mill Managers meeting, it wasn't enough to tackle what was coming down the track. There was a campaign that ran through, the dates get blurry, but let's say into the early part of 2024. And to be honest, it almost preoccupied our time. And everything else, although we did go up to Suffolk Millwrights in Suffolk, a guy, I mentioned his name, Luke Bonwick. He is incredibly knowledgeable. He's highly regarded in the world of windmills and heritage, but he was a contractor with KCC. But he arranged the visit for us to go up to see our mill sales and Tim, and we had a great day. But in fact, he messaged me the other day when the sweeps were turned, and he was delighted. He's given some advice in other respects, but we had his support. Where it's been particularly exciting is that I've had a very proactive group of 5 trustees, Andy, Andrew, Sue and Trevor, and then of course Andy Chapman, who has taken this enormous burden of the health and safety and risk assessment. And we couldn't possibly open up to the public until we got all that sorted out. And so there was a lot of discussions, and this is at the time of the divestment and then ongoing from there. It was almost all procedure and paperwork rather than actually getting your hands dirty on anything. I was just going to say the step on from there was, because I'm in the U3A, and I thought, well, I'm going to need people to help. I can't just be 5 trustees. I'm going to need people to volunteer to help. And because I was in the U3A, and I do run 2 other groups, although I've just handed one back. And then I set up the Windmill Volunteers. And I spoke to them all at one of the monthly meetings and said, I need a core of people. And I think within the U3A, we've got people of different skills and interests. I also set up the Friends of Meopham Windmill Facebook group in the village, and there's 300 people on that. And I've just put updates on that because you get all the usual questions. When's it open to the public? Is it going to move? That's a pool of resources I think I've now got for if I appeal for further volunteers for the Sunday openings, which we are going to need, out of 300, if I could get 10 more. The driver has been, in the forefront. What has driven us and what's driven me is not only to get the mill reconstructed as it has been and looking pretty. There was all the grounds to do. We had a nightmare with Gravesham trying to get all the consent for improving the access. We wanted a bit more space down the side for disabled parking, maybe a couple of cars. They wouldn't have that, so we kept to and fro. And I've got Jim and Andy Day, the contractors. But eventually we've got there, and I think it looks better than it's ever done, because the hedge was such a mess, and I was arranging to have it cut and then said, oh, we can't do it. It's bird's nesting season. I made everyone cackle in the early days because I said my vision is to have those grounds surrounded, so along the front and down the side of the driveway, a white picket fence. Livable sections down the side of the driveway so we can get cars and things in there. Gravesham wouldn't have that. You must retain the front hedge, but you can put a white picket fence in front of it. Well, the practicalities of that are ridiculous because you've got to dig up part of the paving. There's all the roots for the hedge. They wanted the hedge reinstated on the left-hand side of the drive because there used to be, like, I think it was a little box hedge come out when they took the sails off. So they wanted that reinstated, which we've done with variegated privet. And the right-hand side was a horrible mess. And they wanted the overgrown, broken down trees, all sorts of rubbish in there. They wanted a hedge there, not the open fence. So we had to come about a metre out from the fence, and I planted it with hornbeam. We chose hornbeam and privet because I had the Kent Conservation chap out there to advise us on what was the best conservation for it. it's just taken time. But, we've got there. Gravesham could probably say we stretched the driveway another couple of feet, but actually, I think it looks a damn sight better than it did. Concilio, they dug out the 4 windmill sale flower beds, and I've got the volunteers to plant them out, and it looks really pretty. And I think so because the parish council owned the flagpole, people wanted to fly local charities, hospice, cricket club, scouts, all that sort of thing. I would like a windmill flag with that emblem on. Yeah, I'm happy flying the Union flag, and it goes with it. But of course, if I sort of go back to the divestment, then the results of the public consultation came back. I think within Kent, I mean, you never get huge numbers, but I think it was something like 4,000 responses, and about 89% of the responses were for Kent to keep the windmills, not to sell them on. I've got the figures in my head of what it actually cost Kent over 6 years, and you can argue, well, it is quite a lot of money. If you break it down per annum, per mill, it's about 12,000 quid, which in the scale of things is not huge. I think with conservation heritage, once places like that have gone, they're gone, and that's the end of it. And the vote was taken, despite the consultation being so hugely against divestment and changing the conservation and heritage policy, which was only devised about 18 months before. They took the vote 7-6. I watched the debate online in Kent Chamber, and it was voted, and there were cases made for and against, as you always get. It was a 7-6 whipped vote to change the policy to enable the divestment. Now, the ironic thing is that out of the 7 that voted to change the policy to allow the divestment, only 1 has been re-elected. But all we can do, Victoria, is, in the absence of a decision, is keep going forward. But the one thing that almost sets us apart is the fact that we in Meopham, Kent County Council own that windmill and the footprint that it sits on. We as the trust have got a 990-year lease on the windmill, and we own the land all around it. And that was just by good luck back in 1959 when the trust was established. So in terms of selling to someone who wants to make a house out of it or Airbnb, it's a grade 2-star listed as well. It's very, very difficult to do that. It's almost impossible. We could survive, and maybe 1 or 2 other mills of the 8 Kent mills potentially could survive. Others may not be so fortunate. And I think you're asking some questions. I thought, well, Victoria's right. We've spent months trying to get the mess that we inherited, all the documentation sorted out, risk assessments, fire risk assessments, health and safety, all of that. That's been our real focus. And then suddenly, crash bang wallop, we've got the thing turning and we're about to open. We had thought a whole host of different things of involving people in, but going back just a few months, it was pointless to try and do that because everyone was saying, well, when's it going to be open? I said, well, actually, we've still got a problem with fire extinguishers or risk assessments. And so we're in this exciting new phase. One thing I didn't say earlier in all the process was we re-registered with the CIO, which is the Charitable Incorporated Organisation, and it gives a lot of safeguards for being that. What is my vision? To go forward with community events, fundraising events. I mean, I certainly would like, it gets me back to my, perhaps it is the vision and some of the other trustees' visions too, of having a little visitor centre, small museum. I'd like us, Meopham Windmill Trust, to be registered with SPAB, with the Charity Commission, be a CIO, be registered with SPAB, beyond that, I don't know how it would work with English Heritage. It probably would be different. Certainly, SBAB, I think, would be good to have on board. It is an exciting new phase to be entering, really. A phase where more people have got to be involved as they are, and people are stepping up to be involved, which is exactly what we want. And people's roles have now almost naturally broken down into what they're good at, and I think that's important too. So I'm optimistic about it, really. Okay,
Oh.
all right.
All right
Thank
then.
you.
So I'll
Thanks.
see you soon.
Bye. Bye.